Well, if you thought it was going to be an astronaut or the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, a state that is one of the most key to win in the presidential race, now the Minnesota governor is the choice. Yep. The whitest guy of all of the white guys. In there, Tim Walz. He was a school teacher from Nebraska originally.
Yeah, we have some sort of highlights if you want to know about him.
Spent about 20 years in the National Guard.
Yep, 24. Yeah, I'll just go through it. Tim Walz, 41st governor of Minnesota, as you said. He was first elected in 2018 and won re-election in 2022. Six-term congressman. He served in the National Guard for 24 years after enlisting in 1981. After high school graduation, he enlisted in the Army National Guard. He attended
Chadron State
College, graduated with a social science degree in 1989. Spent a year teaching abroad before returning home to serve full-time.
Do you know where?
It does not say. In China. In the Army National Guard, eventually accepting a high school teaching and coaching position. So again, I don't know who they're trying to play for in this moment, because you have a state that hasn't gone red in 50 years probably?
Trump was targeting it this year, as Republicans would like to target it, Logan. I mean, obviously, be great if you could turn Minnesota red.
There that you would feel like could be turned.
Right, but you also have George Floyd, you have the protests, you had the violence, this all happened under Walz.
Yeah.
Now, what's be interesting, when he first ran for Congress, he was a six-term congressman, he had the NRA's endorsement. Now he's banning guns. Right. So he's someone who has moved, like Minnesota kind of has and does, he's moved across the spectrum from kind of moderate white guy from Midwest to liberal Minnesota.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are weirdly, I think the conservative crowd is a little relieved by this pick.
He is the guy that started calling us weird.
Now, he was the origin of weird?
And they said they like that a lot. When you kind of you want to ban books, and you want to be in the operating room with women during abortions, that's kind of weird. Think about it. He came up with that.
Gotcha. So and if anyone would call someone weird, I feel like it's this guy. When you look at him, you're like, look at these weirdos.
And
I'm happily weird, so it's fine.
You don't have to bring up the Jewish thing.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big deal. I think the fact that they were kind of teasing that, okay, you're going to have the first vice president who would be Jewish. Obviously, we've had Joe Lieberman run as well. So, I mean, it's been tried before. It has not happened yet. And then you have Kamala Harris. So you would have thought this could have been another historic big moment. Young people. I was at an event. I was talking about this yesterday on air, where people were talking about how Shapiro did such a good job on his social media and how they really felt like this could be the right guy for the moment. But no, you wake up to the news that it's Tim Walz, someone who really... most people don't even know the name. Most people never heard.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to blame anybody right now if you don't. I mean, if you're not.
I did not until maybe a week ago, until his name started bubbling up in this. Maybe it's the call to pick someone who's going to be, kind of fade away into the background. We said, does this feel like a person who's a future presidential pick?
No.
Not really. They're not thinking that far ahead. They're thinking of an 8-year term for
They're thinking
Harris.
Like, we just got to survive this. Yeah. We got to beat Trump in one election. We've beaten Trump.
Yeah, or maybe like a Cheney, like a Dick Cheney. No one ever thought Dick Cheney was going to run for president.
No, but is Tim Walz so prepared to be?
Yeah, I mean, he's also not like a strategic.
I mean, he's been a governor for a long time.
I mean, kind of, 2018.
And congressman.
Yeah, Congress was 6-term congressman. So he was there for a while.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. He
knows politics.
Right.
Is this a gift to Republicans? Does this make the Kamala honeymoon end? Or is this just another example of, kind of just going to your far left base, using that social media base, the TikTok base, to get them excited?
Last summer, we launched our first ever ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. We never could have imagined how much you, our ACLJ members and ACLJ champions, would exceed our expectations, and we can't thank you enough. We'd love to tell you that 1 year later, threats to life and liberty are no more. Sadly, the radical left is relentlessly doing everything it can to destroy the very foundations of this great nation: life, religious liberty, and the Constitution. The good news is your ACLJ team has not slowed down. We continue to fight in courtrooms across the country, including the Supreme Court, to defend your freedoms and to save innocent babies. And we're proud to announce the return of the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Right now, your tax-deductible gift will be doubled, dollar for dollar, doubling your impact to defend your freedoms and help save innocent lives. Go to aclj.org right now and join us in this fight. All right, welcome back to Seculo. So we have the VP pick for, again, Kamala Harris. It's interesting. I mean, we're going to take calls eventually today. I want to know from folks, to be honest with us, if you knew much about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz until you heard it today. I'm not going to be judgmental of you, but we are also joined right now, Logan, by Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who's also up against one of these insurgent kind of radical types in Tennessee. Again, a little bit different than Minnesota. But Senator Blackburn, this is Jordan, and you tweeted right out that Harris chose to side with the anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas, radical, liberal wing of her party. Let the record show Harris and her party are anti-Israel, and you sent that message out today. I want you to talk people through that who just don't know much about the Minnesota governor.
Yes, and I served in the House with Tim Walz. He was a regular, consistent, to be counted on vote for Nancy Pelosi and her agenda in the House. And one of those main agendas that Pelosi was trying to push, of course, was the climate agenda and that radical doing away with fossil fuels and moving to wind and solar. So, and you've seen that as he has been governor. He has been so far left. He really is one of those climate radicals. And in Minnesota, he put stricter emission standards on SUVs and cars and trucks and tried to align himself with California on that. Indeed, he went so far as to push to do away with fossil fuels by 2040. He didn't want anything other than EVs in Minnesota. And as we saw this past year, the electric car chargers froze, and people could not even charge an electric vehicle in Minnesota. We also know that Tim is right there on that leftist wing with with Kamala Harris and with Nancy Pelosi. And we know that he would be more than happy to stay right there. He wants to do away with private health insurance. He wants to push for universal health care. And he believes in abortion on demand up to the moment of birth. He is always trying to weaken election safeguards. And one of the things that I think is most problematic is the way that he has dealt with illegal immigration. He wants to give them health care. He wants to pay for their college tuition. He wants to give them voting rights. This is all positions that as governor he has taken. So what Kamala Harris did was to go for the most leftist. Jordan, she chose the person most philosophically aligned with her, even though they have spent hours trying to make her into a moderate. All of a sudden, her pick of VP says, nope, she chose somebody who was right there with her.
One of the things, Senator Blackburn, you brought up is obviously the differences between you and a lot of the candidates and, of course, Walz's response to the border crisis, including in Minnesota, by the way. He ran on trying to make Minnesota a sanctuary state. When you hear that kind of rhetoric and you know it may be coming out of a presidential administration, I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that makes you feel.
Oh, when you talk about people that are trying to turn their entire state into a sanctuary state, I want you to think about that. That means you're going to give preferential treatment to people that have broken the law and illegally entered the country. You are going to preference their needs before the needs of tax-paying citizens. And people that try to create these sanctuary states and give them voting rights, give them health care, give them education, give them housing, what you are doing is taking those services, those social services, away from citizens who need those services. And we have seen this in so many of the sanctuaries and cities and states. But the other thing to think about is, what do the cartels do when they come onto U.S. soil? They don't come to somewhere like Tennessee, who has said, you cannot have a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state in the state of Tennessee. You cannot be a sanctuary community. So the cartels go to these sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, and they set up their hubs. And that is where they do their fentanyl distribution, their labor crews, the work gangs. This is where the gangs coalesce. It is where the human trafficking takes place, the sex trafficking takes place. So if that is what you want in your community, go declare yourself a sanctuary city. Go say our entire state, every county, every city is a sanctuary. And that is what you will be potentially opening the door to for your citizens.
You know, we have this sound, and this is interesting. It's from Governor Walz, Senator Blackburn, and he talks about how, again, socialism to one person can just be being a good neighbor to someone else. And I think just playing this over and over to people so they understand his mindset is going to be very important these next few months. Let's play it for everybody.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
I mean, Senator Blackburn, right there, being a good neighbor does not mean being a socialist. And that definition never has to coexist.
Well, you're right about that. I heard that clip, and the first time I heard that clip, I thought, what in the world is he trying to say? Neighborliness, thinking everything you have should be mine, that is being a good neighbor, thinking everybody ought to have exactly the same everything of everything. Is that what he thinks is being a good neighbor? Giving the government control to make decisions for everybody? Does he think that is being a good neighbor? I think that being a good neighbor is showing compassion, reaching out, helping, stepping forward, individual freedoms, and the opportunity to do things is certainly a way to be a good neighbor. And not what yours is mine that is not a way to be a good neighbor.
You know, Senator Blackburn, right here in Tennessee, though, we've got issues. You're running again for re-election. The left here has chosen to run someone very left, and that is what Harris has chosen too. And what we are seeing consistently from the Democrats is choose a liberal running mate, choose someone who is going to back up your liberal bona fides, and you're just going to say, you know what? This is Harris. She gets the support like of a California liberal. She gets the support of a Minnesota liberal. You combine those two kind of liberals together, you're getting pretty close to communist liberal.
Well, and of course, what Walz was trying to do in Minnesota was to align it more with California on the policies affecting illegal immigration, on the policies that are affecting climate, on that Green New Deal, on making certain that they lessen the restrictions around election security. This is one of the things that he is focused on. And we know this. And I think it is important for people to realize they are going to have a choice in November, whether it is my race or whether it is President Trump's race. The Democrat Party is giving you the most leftist candidates. My opponent is the most radical member of the Tennessee State House. The presidential ticket from the Democrats is the most far-left ticket they have ever offered. Each of their presidential nominee in Harris, the VP pick in Tim Walz, they both identify as progressives. They are not out of the mainstream of the Democrat Party. So you've got that far left ticket.
Senator Blackburn, as always, we appreciate you joining us today on this important morning, too, because you served with Governor Walz. So you've got that insight there. People can learn about you at MarshaBlackburn.com with your race in Tennessee. Of course, to support a good conservative there. And we appreciate you coming on right after this announcement day on Seculo. Folks, the left has skirted the Democrat process with their nomination of Harris, and now the left just doubled down on their radical agenda with their VP pick. But your ACLJ has never been more needed, nor more committed to fighting the radical left's agenda, which is why our Life and Liberty Drive has been extended. Please have your gift doubled through our Life and Liberty Drive at ACLJ.org. We just sent a demand letter to the Secretary of the Army after a military base labeled our client Operation Rescue, and anyone with a Choose Life license plate, terrorist groups, were defending Israel before the ICC and the UN, and of course, just filed at the Supreme Court on life. Some people think champions are born, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today. All right, welcome back to Seculo. We're joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, Secretary Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, we all got the news alert this morning. It came across our phones very early, about 8 a.m. Central Time here in Tennessee, Logan.
Started getting texts.
Started getting texts, started getting the alerts, and we saw that Harris had just picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to join her presidential ticket. Just to get your initial thoughts on that announcement.
Well, Jordan, I served with Tim Walz when I was a member of Congress. This is deeply unserious. This is left politics at its most dangerous. This is a pick that Vice President Harris made, which doesn't do a single thing about someone who cares about the border. Indeed, he offered a ladder to get them across. This is someone who has rejected the basic tenets of law and order in his own city. We saw that during the George Floyd riots. I observed him as a member of Congress, not taking seriously his responsibilities. And we know this, too. Vice President Harris is part of a Biden team on foreign policy that has set the world aflame. And Governor Walz has literally zero experience dealing with these complicated and important security issues. So I, for the life of me, I can't figure out how it's the case that the American people would stare at Governor Walz and say, yeah, that's the guy I want to keep my children safe. That's the guy I want to grow my economy, or that's the guy I want to secure my southern border. They just demonstrated a lack of seriousness that is befuddling to me.
Yeah, I mean, you bring that up. You do realize, because Minnesota was in the news a lot over these last few years, but not for good things. I mean, and this was all while Walz was governor. So, for instance, we know how radical he is. Like you said, on the border, he was saying, I'll offer you up. Here's the ladder. He wanted to make Minnesota, a sanctuary state. On energy, to go full EV in a state that, of course, has pretty extreme weather. And the batteries just aren't ready for that yet. On crime, and, of course, they had the riots in Minnesota during COVID, the shutdowns, the taxing, the spending. I mean, if you look at it, you kind of go, okay, he actually got a lot of attention, and the state got a lot of attention. Maybe not him, but the state got a lot of attention over the last few years, more than Minnesota maybe would usually get. That's not how I'd want my state to look if I didn't have to.
No, the contrast that will be presented, right, between the San Francisco model and the Minneapolis model, and what I think everyday ordinary Americans who want to raise their family, live their life, they want their wages a little bit higher, they want their streets safe, they want to be able to go into Walgreens and not have everything locked up. This cannot be encouraging for those people to see that she picked someone just like her, It shouldn't surprise you that Ilhan Omar is ecstatic, beside herself, happy that this progressive leftist was picked to be her vice presidential candidate. But for ordinary Americans who aren't particularly political or who aren't following everything breathlessly like so many, I think they're going to see this, and I think they will reject it because they know that, frankly, it's just not good for them.
Secretary Pompeo, I wanted you to respond to this clip. Our team just pulled this about Walz's relationship with China. As we know, he lived in China, had a significant amount of time there. But let's take a listen, and then being in the positions that you've been in, I want to get your thoughts.
We've been focusing on, and I lived in China, and as I said, I've been there about 30 times, but if someone tells you they're an expert on China, they're probably not telling you the truth, because it's a complex country. But it's critically important for us. I don't fall into the category that China necessarily needs to be an adversarial relationship. I totally disagree.
So that's the comment of him saying that he doesn't believe China should be an adversarial relationship. He's been focused and he's lived there. People are not telling you the truth about the relationship with China. I want to get your opinion.
What on earth is he speaking about? We don't get to choose whether they're an adversary. They have chosen to be an adversary. We can see it every day. We can see it with the threats they're posing in the Pacific. We can see it what they're doing here inside the gates, inside the United States. No, Xi Jinping has made China an adversary. And you know what? When I hear him say that, this is a model that has failed the United States. We've failed to recognize them as an adversary for the past 40 years. And we've tried to placate them, saying, gosh, if we just sell them more stuff or buy more stuff, they'll be more like us. The truth is they are eating our lunch. They've destroyed tens of thousands of jobs in his home state of Minnesota, stealing manufacturing and intellectual property from the people of Minnesota. To foist that on the American people as the vice president or part of the Harris-Walz team would be devastatingly bad for the American economy and the American worker.
Secretary Pompeo, we know that at least 5 service members, that includes U.S. troops and military contractors, they were hurt in Iran-backed missile strikes in Iraq. We don't think this is the actual bigger response that they've been talking about to the killing of, taking out of Ismail Haniyeh from Hamas. What move do you think Iran is looking to make soon? I mean, everybody is kind of on edge. I know a lot of folks in Israel on edge as well about what Iran might try to do next.
So look, I haven't seen the classified information. I don't know what the latest intelligence shows, but it is very clear that the Iranians have expressed that they are going to make a penetrating deep strike into Israel, or at least try to do so. I bet the Israelis are pretty well prepared, but Iran is a big, powerful nation as well. I suspect that what you saw at Assad was a message to Joe Biden and to Vice President Harris. That was a message that says, remember, we can reach you as well. So whatever it is we do next, just know we can hit your soldiers, we can hit your sailors, your airmen, wherever they may be. So when we take our strike, our expectations, you will stand down and allow the Israelis to have to defend themselves on their own. I pray that President Biden will not continue to be so weak and so failing to allow those kind of strikes, to allow Americans to be injured and to do nothing.
Secretary Pompeo, as always, we appreciate all of your insight into this and, of course, the breaking news about this pick. And I want to go to you more throughout because I think hearing from you, hearing from Senator Blackburn earlier, both serving in Congress with Tim Walz, we're going to want a lot more about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's great to have Secretary Pompeo and anyone who can really look into it, because most people, I mean, if you look around the world, I think, what was the percentage? It was like 70% had never heard of him before, of the American population. So this is brand new information to people. They may see certain news reports, certain articles. I told you, I saw the left kind of putting out, hey, he's a moderate. Hey, look what he did. The NRA endorsed him numbers of years ago. And of course, they don't acknowledge what he's been doing in the last decade. So that's something that we're going to cover here. Thank you, Secretary Pompeo, for joining us. We always appreciate your thoughts and opinions on all the breaking news and everything that's happening.
And people have been hanging on the line. Let me go right to this in order. Susan in Maryland on line 4. Hey, Susan, welcome to Secular. You're on the air.
Can you discuss the potential debate with Vance and Walz when Vance tears apart Walz for the negligence in destroying black and brown businesses that never recovered in Minnesota?
Sure. I mean, that whole area, I don't think it has. I mean, I think they called it like George Floyd Avenue. I mean, they've gone back to it before, and it's a lot of businesses, right, that never returned. Things were totally burned out. The police didn't return either. It's not something to be proud of if you're on the left. But, it's almost like barely in his talking points that, he was governor during that. They're saying, well, he was the governor. He wasn't the mayor. But I would like to say this, Susan, thank you for your support of the ACLJ, is you would think, well, that the guy who was the governor of the state that had riots going on is the last person you'd pick if you're the Democrats. And like Secretary Pompeo said, I had to look this up for myself because there's a lot of news on this, obviously. When Ilhan Omar is happy about your pick, you know how radical they are.
Right. And you also have to take...
She is. And she's putting out pictures of her with Governor Walz and how excited she is.
AOC as well.
Yeah. So this is not a moderate. This is not a Midwest moderate. This is a far left radical liberal who wants to bow down to China.
And I think as well, when you point out that he was the governor of the state, when you're the vice president, really the job you're running for is being able to step in as president if a national crisis arises. And in the face of a state crisis in his state as governor, his record, in any more than his policies, shows that he was not up to the task of responding to a state crisis during those riots. And also remember, yes, it was a city, Minneapolis and St. Paul. St. Paul is the capital of Minnesota, so the Twin Cities area is the capital area of the state. It's not like it was a city off somewhere in the Rocks and Cows region of your state. It was your capital city that this happened in. But let's go back to the calls.
Yeah, let's go to Joshua in California online too. Hey, Joshua.
As an American Jewish voter that endorses Donald Trump, I actually woke up somewhat angry this morning to the news of Kamala Harris's VP pick, as it clearly passed over Josh Shapiro only because he's Jewish. And I say that because he's got the same positions on Israel as everyone else in the Democratic Party. Now, while I don't agree with Josh Shapiro's position on Israel, I know a lot of other American Jews that do, including my parents. So I see a massive opportunity here. And my question for you is there someone, or do you think there should be someone in Trump's ear saying he should at least reach out to Josh Shapiro for some sort of endorsement or at least a public statement saying that Kamala Harris didn't choose him because he was Jewish? I hear he's extremely politically aspirational and might be in the position to sway a lot of Jewish voters towards Trump.
Listen, I think because he's very politically aspirational, he's never going to say that.
Right.
He might know that's the case. Listen, John King from CNN said it. This was not something, Joshua, and I think that, again, if you're anybody who's Jewish should just note this. This isn't anybody's having like in the back, the discussions. They had it right on TV immediately that they said if they pick a Jewish nominee, that would upset the party. And, of course, they have not. They've instead picked the Minnesotan who is getting the support of Ilhan Omar.
Can we
also
just reflect on that for a moment?
Just think about that for a minute.
The state that we're in America, that it is not a secret. It's not an open secret. It's an open talking point that she couldn't pick someone because they're Jewish. That's how anti-Semitic the Democrat Party is. Right.
She wasn't going to be able to pick Shapiro.
If I was a Democrat right now, with all the topsy-turvy situations going on, waking up to another head fake would probably anger me quite a bit. It's like, what? Can we just straight shoot for 1 minute?